3 years ago, it was my pleasure to have Michael in the studio, and he has just snuck into Melbourne for around about 3 or 4 gigs on his way home, on the way out, and has decided to drop in to say hello again. An absolute pleasure to have him back. Michael Charles, welcome back to Blues on the Hill.
Thanks for having me back, Barry. Always a pleasure to talk to you, brother.
Absolute pleasure to have you. Now, congratulations. All I really know from A to Z, as they say over there. Michael Charles, the documentary film based on the life and career of. How does it feel? 5 years in the making, finally released.
Well, it's quite an achievement, because when I first got approached to do this thing, I knew it would be a long project. I mean, I'm used to long projects, as I take my time. I try and make a best record every time I do a new record. So I could take up to 2 years doing any of my albums. But I thought, this probably take 3-4 years maybe, and end up being like about 7 years. But all worth it in the end, I believe. It's just one of those things that, and when I was approached to do this thing, I thought, a documentary on me, and then I thought, what are we going to put in this thing? But when you start researching back how you started, and there was a story there, and there was a gentleman by the name of Salek Silverstein that did all my music videos in the 80s. As you know, in the 80s, no music video, no record sales. So
yeah,
and he
MTV, the world of MTV.
Yeah, exactly. And when he approached me, he found me on Facebook, and I hadn't heard from him for years and years. And so I said to him, "Well, why don't we make another music video?" And he said, "That'll be great." And about 2 or 3 weeks later, he contacts me again and says, "You know what? Let's forget the music video. Let's just make a whole documentary." Because I've been, looking at everything on YouTube and tracing back on your career. He goes, "We have to do something bigger than just a music video." And that's how all that came to be. So from that little idea, you're holding it in your hands right now.
An inspirational film recording a journey of passion, endurance, and the belief in oneself. That's, that's the blues as well. That's the story of the blues, isn't it?
It sure is. I mean, if you don't believe, well, that's the story of just about anything. If you don't believe in yourself, what do? You think about it. I mean, if you have to believe in yourself first, because let's face it, the people out there are not going to do anything for you. They're not. They'll believe in you when you've made it, but when you're on that climb up, most people just walk right past you and don't even see you.
You're not going to promote yourself. Who's going to promote you?
Exactly. So I think it's the core of the whole thing.
And on the trailer, you mentioned acceptance. You mentioned, how. So sort of expand on that. Being accepted as a blues player in America, being accepted as a blues player over there. What did you mean by sort of acceptance? You were sort of struggling with acceptance.
Well, that little clip that you're talking about, that was when I was still living in... I'd just gone to the States for the first trip and then came back. And actually, I believe it was Channel 10. I did this little mini documentary on me. I can't remember the name of the show right now. And... that was one of the questions they asked me, is like, what's it like to be, in the States now and from Australia? And the first thing out of my mouth was, the hardest thing, forget the success and the now. I said, the hardest thing was to be accepted, because one of the things you need to do as an artist, and I'm sure most people you interview have the same thing to say, and that you have to be unique. You can't sound like everyone else, so you've got to find a uniqueness and put a little twist to your music. And once you do that, it becomes very hard, because nobody really gets it until it becomes something, if that's making any sense to you, because it's so different and so unique. And so that's where that came with the hardest thing was to be accepted, because people just, I shouldn't say people, I'd say mainly the industry would go with the flow of what's out there, the flavour of the month, if that makes sense.
Well, especially as an Australian, that's twice as hard. I mean, you're going over there, taking their music back to them and asking for them to accept you, because, I mean, you've made a career out of it. You stayed over there.
Yeah, and the early days in the States, what I did was to start climbing that ladder. I kind of put my songs aside and I started playing a lot of traditional standards and get into those blues clubs and play with everybody and play what they were doing. And then probably after about 4 or 5 years of that, I started introducing my music back into it. But, Barry, the one thing that happened was I started getting less work because I didn't get it.
Yeah.
But I stuck with it, and the rest is history.
Yeah, exactly. You got to. Now, you've got some friends here. You've got a guitar with you, and you've got another rhythm section here. So, you want to play something? Tell us, first introduce your friend there on the guitar.
Well, when I decided to come to Australia this time, I left my band. I gave them a couple of weeks off and said, so they're all happy to have a few weeks off. And so what I did is I got together with some guys that I'd known or worked with in the past before moving to the States. And Arch he was just a young boy. He used to knock on my mother's door and say, "Oh, can I see Michael so he can teach me some guitar chords and things like that?" And so he was just, and then one day he just contacted me out of the blue, and I said, "Oh yeah, I remember you," and all that was all great. And then I was on Facebook one morning, and one of his did a little home recording, and I heard him play, and he kind of floored me. I said, "Wow, this guy's good." So when I decided to come out, I said, "You want to just play some guitar for me?" And he's worked out great. Great little player, man.
Awesome.
Amazing.
All right. Well, what do you want to do? Seeing as you've got the guitars there.
Let's do a song that you kind of. Last time I was here, you said you really liked this song.
Yeah.
And you played it off Concert at the Nest.
That's it.
Let's do an acoustic version for you. You might recognise the song.
Awesome.
Kick it off for me, Arch. Giving my heart away for a brighter day. Well, since you left me, honey, you know I started a brand new life. Thought you were the one for me, but all you brought was pain and misery. But now I found myself a brand new pole to lean on. Don't feel the hurt as much anymore. Thought you could hang on to me, but I hope you learned your lesson, you let me be. But I'll still hang on to love, as long as I can breathe. Now I found myself a brand new pole to lean on. Don't feel the hurt as much anymore. Thought you could hang on to me, but I hope you learned your lesson and you let me be. But I still hang on to love, as long as I can breathe. Maybe so much. My heart away for a brighter day. Since you left me, honey, you know I started a brand new life. thought you were the one for me, but all you brought was pain and misery. But now I found myself a brand new pole to lean on. Don't feel the hurt as much anymore. Thought you could hang on to me, but I hope you've learned your lesson and you'll let me be. But I'll still hang on to love as long as I can breathe.
Awesome stuff. Live blues, folks. Don't get any better than that. Michael Charles. The DVD is All I Really Know from A to Z. It's a documentary a documentary film based on the life and career of Michael Charles. Listening and watching his guitar work is mesmerising. He plays original licks I've never heard. He definitely makes all his work his own. He has a style that can't be explained. That's from Jack Mulder, just one of the quotes. Great quotes, and that's the hardest thing in blues, isn't it? Is to be yourself. Like you say, you started off, you had to play blues like they wanted to hear, but then you have to introduce your own slowly and think, hang on, this guy doesn't sound like anyone else. He has got his own licks. He can play the blues.
Well, it kind of puts you in a whole different dimension, because when you're just following the lead and just you get on those stages, especially in the US, especially in Chicago, living in Chicago, it's the capital of the blues of the US, and a lot of tourists come around to the blues clubs all over the world. They want to hear traditional music, and so, when I decided to say, well, I'm going to move on and go back to what Michael Charles should be doing, because I wanted to make a career of myself. You want to make a name for yourself. So as much as I climbed up the ladder, I started finding myself going down the ladder again. But then all at once, there was a point there where I just stuck with it. I said, it's either going to work or it's not. Yeah. And then I just saw everything starting to rise again, and you get accepted and never look back. But you've got to stick with it.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, is it going through the lows.
Well, the hardest thing, you got two reasons. One, it hits your ego a little bit, and it's like, wow, man, it's like everything's falling apart. And the other thing is you can't pay your bills. So you put those two together, and it's kind of a disaster within yourself. But as I say, the secret is, if anyone's listening that's up and coming and wants to do this, you just got to stick with it. Yeah, I think it's important that you do that, because I like the way you put it. It has to evolve, because if it doesn't, it's becoming stale, I guess. Yeah. It's great to listen to guys like Muddy Waters and B.B. King and Buddy Guy and all the greats that we all admired and followed suit and we learned from them. But personally, myself, I don't want to sound like Muddy Waters or Buddy Guy or B.B. King. I want to sound like me. And I think that's the important thing, is to find your own sound. And that is a tough thing to do too.
Absolutely. Do you want to play another one while you're here?
Yeah, we can do another one.
Yeah, well,
you.
You've got,
just follow my lead. Let's do Must Be On My Own. Let's play what we're talking about. Something that goes a little bit somewhere else, okay? So... I must be on my own. Can anyone help me? Where to go? Oh yeah. I've gotta find some way out. I must be on my own. Can anyone help me? Where to go? I've gotta find some way out. I must be on my own. Can anyone help me? Where to go? Where to go? Oh, yeah. Take it on down. Take it on home now.
Awesome stuff, live blues, folks. That's the way it should be played. That is Michael Charles.